Hi there, students, and welcome to 2.4 from the Human Resources Management topic, Motivation and Demotivation. So this is a really important topic. It has a lot of content and has a lot of theory attached to it. So really valuable because you should be able to use the theory to support all of your extended response questions, so especially the 10-mark question in paper 2. Okay, so let's get into it. It's a long topic and it's a really important one. So let's get going. So you can see the first slide. It's described as motivation and demotivation, the driving force behind performance. So we're looking at different theories of motivation and also practical ways that businesses can inspire and retain their workforce. We don't want to just motivate them. We want them to remain with us and to be productive. Okay, so what is motivation? Motivation is the desire, effort, and passion to achieve something, and it stimulates people to exert effort toward organizational goals. So why is this important for a business? So obviously, if you've got a motivated workforce, they're going to be more productive, they're going to produce better quality output, staff are more likely to remain at the business, so less staff turnover, i.e. higher retention rates, and also that can relate to enhanced customer satisfaction. So more likely to get satisfaction from workers that are more motivated. Now, we have lots of different theories that we're going to go through here. And the first one, which is a really old school theory, almost irrelevant these days, but it still remains in the syllabus for some reason. And it's Taylor's scientific management theory. So this is all about maximizing efficiency through specialization. So you might already be aware of something called the division of labor, and we can think about how this applies, especially in factories. So the division of labor increases productivity, and in this case, Taylor would suggest, or did suggest, that money was the primary motivator. And as I said, this was very relevant in the time of, and when people were sort of working in some fairly low-skilled jobs. And therefore, maybe they were mainly motivated by money. The implementation of this related to what's called piece rate pay, where workers earn based on the units produced. So again, if they're motivated by money, and if they're paid per unit produced, then they're more likely to produce more units and therefore increase their salary that way. Now, this theory was highly criticized. It worked mainly and related mainly to monotonous work environments like factories. It didn't necessarily apply to other areas where more creativity, more independence was valued. And it also ignored some social needs. And we'll kind of talk more about needs when we talk about Maslow's theory of, or Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And here we are. So Maslow, Abraham Maslow, this is a very famous sort of concept, and he created this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, starting with the very most basic needs at the bottom, the physiological needs. These are basic survival needs that are met through fair compensation. That means that if the worker is given enough money, then they can use that money for food, basically, and shelter. So basic needs. The next need is safety, and this relates to security via job stability as well as safe working conditions. So two different elements of safety there. The third need is the social needs, so belonging through teamwork and workplace relationships. The second from the top, is esteem needs. So we're now sort of moving up, and there's normally an assumption that you would satisfy one need before you got to the next, but that was also one criticism of this idea. So getting up to esteem needs, when we receive recognition and respect via our job titles and our achievements, we are satisfying our esteem needs. Now, at the very top of the pyramid is what's called self-actualization, and this might be fairly difficult to achieve and fairly rare in most cases. This is reaching potential through challenging work and creativity. This is kind of like when a person feels that they've really found their mission in life within the workplace, within their job. We also have Herzberg's two-factor theory. So Herzberg was another person who sort of jumped on some of Maslow's ideas, and he came up with what he called motivators and hygiene factors. So the motivators were considered intrinsic factors that create satisfaction. The hygiene factors were considered extrinsic factors that prevent dissatisfaction. So this often confuses students. The motivators were things like achievement, recognition, meaningful work, responsibility, and advancement. So you can see there, mainly intrinsic things. The hygiene factors, things like company policy, supervision, salary, working conditions, and job security. So these were the things that if they weren't up to the right standard, that would lead to dissatisfaction. Just having them, though, doesn't necessarily lead to motivation. The motivators are the ones which would create satisfaction. Okay. And in terms of a couple of terms that are really important in this topic, job enrichment adds challenging tasks to the job, and job enlargement adds more similar tasks to the job. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is McClelland's acquired needs theory. And this is actually a higher level theory. So this is for higher level students only. So McClelland talked about the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, and the need for power. Achievement is excelling, succeeding, and mastering challenging tasks, and seeking personal accomplishment. These people normally prefer moderate risk tasks, and they want some concrete feedback. Those that are after affiliation, they use friendly and close interpersonal relationships. They value teamwork, they seek acceptance, they prefer collaboration. And then there are others who focus on the need for power, and the desire to influence or control others is a motivating factor for these people. These are the people that seek leadership positions, they want to impact others, and they enjoy competitive situations. Now, managers should identify and appeal to an individual's dominant need in order to motivate them. So they need to identify what type of person they have working for them and what are the things specifically out of these three things that motivate them. Now, another theory is called the self-determination theory, and this is talking about autonomy, relatedness, and competence. This one is not really one that's in the syllabus that you need to worry too much about, but it might pop up and you might hear this referred to occasionally. We now have our equity and expectancy theory. So equity theory, this is when employees compare their inputs, meaning their effort and their skills, and the output, the pay, the recognition. They compare all these things with other people. So this is all about feeling that you're getting what you deserve. And sometimes there might be a perceived unfairness that leads to demotivation, and the worker might therefore adjust their effort if they don't think they're getting what others are getting for the same effort. Related to this is the expectancy theory. So effort, that's our work input. Performance, we get results. Reward, valued out. So motivation depends on the belief that effort leads to desired outcomes. So this is expectation, or in this case, we call it expectancy theory. Now, rewards within the workplace can be either financial or non-financial. So financial rewards, things like direct compensation, meaning wages either paid hourly or piece rate, and salaries, which are different to wages. Remember that wages are more short-term, as previously mentioned with hourly and piece rate. Salaries are fixed payments, normally an annual amount, which a person is paid as a part of the contract, of course, divided into months or weeks, depending upon how regularly they get paid. Another financial reward is commission. So if people are working in the sales industry, for example, they might receive a small percentage of all of their sales as a part of their salary, not necessarily all of their salary. Another thing to consider is performance-based pay. So sometimes people are paid based on getting a share of the profits, and that's a motivating factor. Sometimes we have performance bonuses, and sometimes there are share ownership schemes where if people perform, they receive a share of the company. There are also fringe benefits such as company cars, healthcare plans, pension contributions. So these are still considered financial, even though they're not quite the same as getting your monthly salary, because they are still financial from the business perspective because they have to be paid for. Non-financial rewards. So lots and lots of things come into this. So job design. So the job can be designed so that a person receives what we call job enrichment, where we add complex tasks. People are motivated by being given those complex tasks. Job enlargement, where we increase the task variety. Or job rotation, where people move between different roles. And again, this is in order to help them enjoy the job that they're doing and therefore also motivate them. The next one is empowerment. So this is when we give people a little bit more decision-making authority. We give them greater autonomy in order to make decisions and feel that they've got responsibility, and giving them also ownership of projects. This, again, is seen as being motivating. You might think yourself about when you're doing group work, if you're the leader of the group, whether or not that motivates you. And purpose and teamwork. So when people feel they're making meaningful contributions, then they're motivated. And many people are motivated by collaborating or having a work environment that is collaborative. And this relates to having shared goals and achievements as well. The next little topic here is training and appraisal. So there are different types of training. There's on-the-job training, where you learn while you're working with either a mentor or you're doing some job rotation or some shadowing. So you're actually learning on the job. And there are times when you might be learning off the job. You might be sent to a workshop or a course or some kind of simulation where it's not actually taking place at the workplace. The next thing we're going to talk about is appraisal. So appraisal can be formative, where it's like ongoing feedback for improvement, or it can be summative, just like you're used to seeing at school, where it's an appraisal at the end of a certain period of time. There's also something called 360-degree appraisal, where the appraisal takes place and a person is being appraised by those that are at the same level as them, as well as the level above them, but even the level below. So, for example, in my school here, we might be appraising our principal, okay? And that principal might be appraised by other people at a different level as well. Next thing is recruitment and labour turnover. So recruitment can be done either internally or externally. So you might fill vacancies with the existing employees that you've got. You might promote people from within. This might motivate the current staff because they work hard and they'll get a promotion. And this also reduces training time. So with each of these things, you need to consider the pros and the cons. External recruitment, this is when you hire candidates from outside the organisation. So this brings in fresh perspectives, it increases the talent pool, and it brings in new skills and ideas. Now, the labour turnover rate is quite important. So if we were to kind of just calculate the percentage of people leaving compared to the average number of employees, we'll come up with a percentage. And that shouldn't be zero, because we do want some turnover and you do need some turnover, but you don't want the turnover rate to be too high. If you have high turnover, that sort of is an indication that there's demotivation in the workplace. It also increases your cost because you've got more recruitment to do. It raises your training expenses, and it can have an impact, a negative impact on team morale. Okay, so that's where we're going to leave this unit, and then we'll move into the next one in our next video. We'll see you then.